Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello, brother. Hello, room. Welcome to the A24 project on the Nerd Party Network. We've got a diverse range of shows from Nerd Nuptial to Missing Frames, Filibuster, Aggressive Negotiations, Retro Perspective, and much more. And be sure to find them all on thenerdparty.com and subscribe and stream on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you download your podcasts. So, this week, Oscar Isaac returns to A24 and Mojave, and we look at Room, A24's first Best Picture nominated film starring Brie Larson. But first, we've got Dallas King. How are you, Dallas?
I'm very well. How are you? How are you, brother? Brother.
Yeah, brother.
What you gonna do, good, brother? So... when the mega powers run wild on you.
Absolutely. I mean, if people haven't watched Mojave, this has already been lost into them. You haven't accidentally tuned into a WWE podcast. This is definitely.
Oh, we should totally do project. A WWE podcast.
I will have nothing to do with the WWE podcast. That could be you and Sean or someone like that.
I thought you liked fighting with my family.
I did, but not enough to subscribe to the network or the biz, as they say.
Oh.
But on kind of this week's show, we're going to look at these two different movies. But kind of first, we're going to sort of, as always, we'll look at the A24 Hour news. And after the last week's episode, where it seemed to be just countless bits of news, it is all quite quiet at the moment. So High Life is out there in the USA, having quite a colourful press tour, but it doesn't arrive here until May 10th. 8th Grade will be coming out next week here at the Long Last in the UK. But those reviews will be for sort of future episodes here on the podcast. But be sure to check out Filibuster to hear me and Dallas' thoughts on 8th Grade on our latest episode, and subscribe to the show to get a future High Life episode. So really the kind of only news of note at time of recording is that Under the Silver Lake has finally landed in select New York and Los Angeles cinemas this week. And sort of, I suppose this is a bit of news, more sort of a bit of a brief discussion, but it's been kind of a baffling story for this film, with sort of A24 in sort of kind of recent weeks receiving criticism for how they've handled this movie on sort of social media. After kind of some mixed reviews after Cannes 2018, the film went back to the editing suite, and the film was actually due to drop in America 1 month later in June last year, but was pushed back. And the film started rolling out in France and Belgium last year, arrived in the UK in March, and now after months of the film being torrented with HD copies of the film being available in France, it's landed in America with a very limited release, and it's even returned back to the A24 webpage after going missing there, and fans kind of picking up on it in the past few weeks as well. So there's been some suggestion that A24 are trying to hide the movie because of some of the mixed reviews, and that they're only giving their well-reviewed films, you know, your Ladybirds, Moonlights, High Life, etc. Only those films are getting sort of the cinema and prestige treatment, and some films are just being given sort of the most limited run and then shoved out onto sort of video on demand. So we've both caught the kind of film and both really liked it. What did you think has kind of gone on with sort of Under the Silver Lake, and why is sort of their treatment of this film kind of making news?
It's a really odd one that, you know, the path to the big screen or small screen for this film, well, certainly in America, is almost as convoluted as the plot of the film itself. But I did see the news where people thought it might have been down to the fact that it was already out in so many other territories that they were worried that it was going to harm the box office, cinematic box office in America. So they were basically going to put it out in the two major locations that you normally get for, say, award contention, sort of New York and Los Angeles, and then go straight to streaming. But, you know, I did notice that there was that period where the film sort of just dropped off of their website and then turned back on. But I mean, maybe it's, you know, these people sort of saying that, oh, they only want to release their prestige films and on the big screen and stuff like that, clearly have not watched all of the A24 back catalogue that we've watched, because, you know, The Revenge of the Green Dragons, for example, and stuff like that, you know, Cut Bank, you know, there's been some absolute stinkers so far that we've seen that are, but maybe, you know, this is perhaps I think maybe people became more aware of A24 probably from actually maybe around about this exact time in the timeline with, you know, Best Picture nominee Room. So perhaps it's, you know, they're trying to protect their brand and whatever. But I really liked Under the Silver Lake. I knew straight away that people were not going to I could tell 30 seconds in that this film was not going to be for everyone, but I really sort of dug the vibe it had going, and it's a very, very weird sort of, I think I described it sort of Big Lebowski meets Chinatown via Mulholland Drive, but that description is enough for me to go, wow, I want to see that film. And I thought it was really good. I thought Andrew Garfield was great in it, and yeah, it's a film which I'd be keen to rewatch sometime down the road as well. And I hope that people do get to see it. I think it's quite difficult achieving in the UK at the moment to get. I think it's on Mubi streaming, but I think
it's already
it's already gone. Wow,
it only got 30 days.
Wow, and then I think if you want to get it on DVD or something, you have to get it from Amazon France or something. So yeah, this is a very, very odd one. I think it will be talked about, down because this is from the director of It Follows, which is one of the best horror films of the last 5 years. 2015. Yeah, I'm still within the time window of saying it's 5 years. I just thought it was brilliant, and I thought, he kind of reinvented but also paid homage to classic horrors with It Follows, and he did the same, I think, for the film noir genre with this. And I think it's if you can find a copy, whether it's on streaming or on physical media, I think you should definitely check it out. Don't read the reviews and whatever, and I'd be interested to hear what people have to think about this film, because I personally loved it, but I know that some people won't.
Yeah, the one thing is, I can appreciate that, bad movies come along and it's like, oh, we've maybe cocked up here, but the reaction at worst for this movie has been, yeah, we didn't really like it and it's been mixed, but some people have loved it. I think me and you, we're probably the audience for this type of movie, and we really enjoyed it, and there seems to be a lot of kind of wanting to get to the bottom of what's been kind of going on and check this film out. And I think it's great that it's finally getting some kind of release in America. But as you mentioned, A24, and we'll discuss it in this episode for sure, have released some crap, and this is not anything like that at all. This film is excellent. It's clearly got an audience built in there. I mean, they did a whole load of screenings at the Prince Charles in London. Andrew Garfield was there, sellout screenings. There's definitely an audience for this film. I just think that when you put it in sort of the history of A24 and all the films that they've done, and even sort of the past few years, it is so good. It's in definitely in that sort of top section for me. And you think of something like Climax, which I enjoyed. I saw it last year here in the UK. Good film. And it got a bigger rollout and sort of attention, and VHS tapes and sort of gimmicks and goodies and stuff like that for Climax. And while I liked Climax, it is nowhere near as good as Under the Silver Lake. So it's certainly been a baffling one. I think it's really annoyed a lot of people that like A24, and it's given perhaps some of their critics something that they can kind of throw at it.
Yeah, well, maybe, by the time we get round to reviewing Under the Silver Lake in a future episode, sort of 20 episodes down the line or whatever it is, maybe we'll have a bit more information about what really happened behind the scenes, and we can start to piece together in a sort of film noir-esque conspiracy what really happened to this film. But yeah, it's an odd one, but I don't think it doesn't really take anything away from the quality of the film, I think, and it's just a shame if it does restrict people from seeing it, because it is definitely worth checking out.
Absolutely. So we are going to wrap up 2015 and dive into 2016 with our two movies today. So we start with Room. So for those not familiar with Room or didn't catch it at the time, Room is the story of Jack, a spirited 5-year-old boy who is looked after by his loving and devoted mother. Like any good mother, Joy, played by Brie Larson in her Oscar-winning role, dedicates herself to keeping Jack happy and safe, nurturing with the warmth and love, and doing typical things like playing games and telling stories. Their life, however, is anything but typical. They are trapped, confined to a 10 by 10 foot space that Joy has named Room. Joy has created a whole universe for Jack within the room, and she will stop at nothing to ensure that even in the treacherous environment, Jack is able to complete a fulfilling life. But as Jack's curiosity about their situation grows, and Joy's resilience reaches its breaking point, they reenact a risky plan to escape, ultimately bringing them face to face with what may be the most scariest thing yet, the real world. So Dallas, this film kind of was quite the big deal in 2015. It was adapted from the book of the same name. how did you kind of catch the film for the first time? Had you read the book, and what did you think of it?
I hadn't read the book, and I probably caught this one in sort of my Oscar roundup that year of sort of catching everything, sort of the January, February sort of time period leading up to the Oscars, so I can make my informed decisions of what I would like to see win and what should win. And yeah, no, that was where I sort of first saw the film. Lenny Abrahamson had done the film, I think, was it Frank? The film with Michael Fassbender as the leader singer of a band who wore a Frank Sidebottom mask, which I actually really liked. I really liked that film, and this was something completely different for him and sort of very sort of serious subject matter. And Brie Larson was absolutely deserving of the Oscar for me. I mean, she was fantastic in Scott Pilgrim, but also I think Short Term 12 around that time that came out. I thought she was just absolutely magnificent in this, and a fantastic actress. And yeah, no, I think I remember not being overly keen on the film. I don't know if it was because I sort of watching the trailers, I was expecting it to be almost entirely set within Room, and it was going to be more about them leading up to trying to build up to their escape, whereas the film itself is sort of half set in Room and then half of them dealing with what it's like on the outside. And it wasn't until my rewatch now that I actually kind of appreciated it a lot more. Sort of seeing how it flips halfway through to sort of show that essentially, even though they're outside of the room, it's certainly something that Ma's character Joy can never truly leave. There's still hope for Jack at this point because I think the doctor says he's still plastic. He's still young enough that he might not be completely and totally affected by what's going on. There's still a chance for him to grow and sort of turn it into a normal sort of boy and stuff like that. So yeah, no, it was an old one that I wasn't the biggest fan first time round, but I think I appreciated it more second time round. What about yourself?
Yeah, I had never read the book, and I kind of went in sort of quite curious about it, like the idea of a film all within this tight confine. And the one thing it was difficult for me. I think Brie Larson is excellent in this, but I really just struggled to like the kid. I just think his voice was so high pitched and he was quite irritating. And I get that that's part of his character, that he is meant to be sort of pushing joy, and it's difficult to kind of thread that kind of needle sometimes between irritating child and a child that is irritating the main character, because that's part of the plot. And I just found it really hard the first time watching. It's like, okay, right. And I didn't like that it was sort of half in the room, half out with the room. I didn't expect so much time to be dedicated to life outside the room. And on a repeat viewing, I didn't really change my opinion on it. I was still sort of right down the middle on it. And yeah, I just found the kid just to be unbearable. The hello room, hello nails, hello sink, hello toilet, all these things. I was like, no, it's just I couldn't get past that. I found that too difficult.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought he was good. I mean, I was reading up on some sort of theories that people had about the film and stuff, and I think one thing I haven't read the book, so I don't know if this is true or not, that every sort of night, she puts him in the wardrobe and stuff like that, and the man who's kidnapped her and abused her for so many years and whatever is not allowed to see the kid or interact with the kid. And there was, I think someone had sort of said that they'd wondered if, because the kid had long hair and whatever, that they wondered if it was actually a girl, and she'd called him Jack to try and put the guy off the fact that it was a girl, because there's potential that he might have started abusing her as well. I mean, I think it is just the fact that he's just got really long hair, because clearly the guy doesn't allow any knives or scissors or any sharp implements, because they might try and attack him with them. So that's the only reason. So it's interesting that certain subtext seem to get lost on people when they watch the film, whatever. But I can see what you're saying. He is slightly great. I mean, certainly in The Predator, I did not like him at all. I found him quite really annoying, but I thought he was all right in this, and he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor and stuff like that. And I think he was one of the stars of the red carpet that year on that award season. Everyone seemed to love Jacob Tremblay, and he was the Richard E. Grant, I think, of that year, sort of getting selfies with all the stars and stuff like that. So it was a nice story. But yeah, no, I thought I was, I think, slightly more accepting of him and his performance than you were, I think.
So obviously Brie Larson won the role and obviously the Oscar, but Emma Watson, Rooney Mara, Shailena Woodley, and Mia Wasikowska were considered for sort of the role of Joy as well. Do you think Brie Larson was the best person for the role, and could you sort of picture any of the other actors kind of filling in for her?
No, I think she was, because no, just sort of thinking about it. Yeah, I'm not sure if I could. I mean, I'm sure that if they had got it, they would have been very good, and we wouldn't. We would have been. It would have been completely fine. But yeah, no, I thought she was just seemed really naturalistic, and you could see the sort of pain behind her eyes, and especially in the second half, I think, where once she's actually outside, where it all starts to fall apart for her, and she's actually realised it's just exactly what's happened to her and stuff like that. I thought she was fantastic in that, and there is some hope for a character, but it does go to some sort of very, very dark places. And I thought the filming of it, because it is almost sort of two films, because Lenny Abraham's basically the entire first half of the film was shot, as he said. They created like this 11-foot by 11-foot sort of room and they filmed everything in. He was sometimes hidden in the bathtub away out of shot while they were trying to get all the stuff, and it is very sort of claustrophobic and sort of brings you into that. But it reminded me of another film, I think from around 2011. It's a film called Michael. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it. It's about a boy who basically lives in like this underground sort of room, and it's about the guy who kidnapped him and whatever. And it's a very sort of matter of fact sort of film about this pedophile who's kidnapped this boy and is grooming him and stuff like that. And it's shocking in just how mundane and everyday the interactions between them are and stuff. And that's what's quite terrifying. And that was sort of the thing about it here as well, where it's just sort of they're trying to make the best and she's trying to give this kid as normal a life as possible in just the most extraordinary of circumstances, I think. And I mean, what did you think of, like, once they sort of got out of room and they sort of brought in other characters, such as the parents of Joy's characters? What did you think of sort of Joan Allen and William H. Macy? Because I would have liked to have seen more of William H. Macy. I thought there was an unexplored sort of subplot there that could have gone into more. Maybe it was in the book, but I thought there was more to have been done with his character.
Yeah, when I was kind of rewatching it, I'd forgot he was in it, and I was like, "Oh, it's William H Macy. Like, oh, he must be in it for the final stretch of the movie." And that kind of wasn't obviously the case. He sort of has a very sort of brief role in it, and I'm always someone that loves sort of William H Macy, but as I say, sort of that second half of the film, just it doesn't sort of grip me the way the first half does. And while I found the kid somewhat irritating, I was kind of gripped by the story of how this life within this small box, that how they were coping, what they were doing to overcome things, sort of making the extraordinary and the mundane. That was quite interesting to me. And then when it sort of goes out into the wider world, it becomes sort of like TV drama style stuff in terms of what's going on. And I just kind of wasn't really into that. I was like, yeah, I've kind of seen these things done a lot before, but I've never really sort of seen this sort of tight space sort of kind of being directed. There's been a few movies in the past few years, but it's always interesting to see this tight space used. Sort of the performance of Brie Larson was so strong in that section. I just think that part was what gripped me and felt so different, and then the rest, that was when I kind of checked out. What about for yourself? Did you want sort of more of the family and that kind of life?
It does get slightly sort of more, I think, melodramatic once she's out of the room. But I mean, there's clearly this sort of situation where William H Macy, like, they're at the dinner table, and like Joy's like screaming at him to look at her son and whatever. But he's clearly, if he looks at the son, he basically sees that this is a product. The son only came about because of this man who had kidnapped his daughter for 7 years, had continually raped and abused her and stuff, and that's what he sees it's like a visual reminder of what happened to his daughter in the form of Jack. So I can understand that, and I thought that might have been a very interesting route to go down. But I think once it does gets out of room, I think we could talk about the elephant in the room. And I don't know if it's because of what I've seen since, but I think the problem with watching Room now is, I don't know if you've watched the incredible Kimmy Schmidt, but essentially this is the comedic version of what Room is about, and that Kimmy Schmidt was stuck in a bunker with a bunch of girls called the Mole Women, who were kidnapped by John Hamm, of all people. And then Kimmy Schmidt is essentially the second half of Room. It's what happens to her once she tries to reintegrate herself into society, but basically done for comedic effect because all she knows are 90s references. And then she's been in the thing, and then she comes out in sort of 2015. So have you seen Kimmy Schmidt? Are you a fan of Kimmy Schmidt? Did it taint your viewing of Room as it perhaps did for me?
I'd seen sort of first season of Kimmy Schmidt, but I've never watched the second one, and I really enjoyed Kimmy Schmidt. I couldn't help but think of sort of the connections, obviously, between that and Room. But then, for some reason, I thought, well, you were going to say like what kind of the elephant in the room, and sort of talk about the other movie.
Oh, of course,
Room.
yes. Yeah, no, I did have it written down. I was like, yeah, no, because it was like the disappointment of finding out you're getting to do the Room on the A24 project, and then it's like, oh, it's not that one. But we will kind of, I guess, in a future episode with the Disaster Artist, we will get to talk about the Room, so that's all good.
Definitely. So, yeah, I really liked Kimmy Schmidt. I never got beyond sort of the first season, for just no other reason other than there's so much to see and watch. And, I do love a Gordon Ramsay TV program, so I'm easily distracted by that. But what about for yourself? Are you an unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt fan?
I'm a big fan of Kimmy Schmidt. Yeah, no, I thought her and Titus and Carol Kane in it are all magnificent, and it's just a very, very funny program. And yeah, sort of the season where she sort of starts to reconnect with John Hamm's character, who is the one who kidnapped her, is great. And yeah, I think it's just from seeing that and then going back into Room. Yeah, I think that I just couldn't help but make sort of comparisons in my mind and stuff like that, and I think it has slightly tainted my viewing of Room, but it doesn't take anything away from Brie Larson's incredible and worthy Oscar-winning performance, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So have you got any kind of final thoughts on Room?
I think it's one that is, it was great that this was, the start of, I guess, A24 thing that, this was where they started, they got Best Picture. I think Lenny Abraham also got a Best Director nomination. I think that's probably due to the fact of how well he managed to sort of create the first half of the film in using this incredibly small space to tell such an incredible story. And, Brie Larson's Oscar win as well. So this was the start of the A24 award juggernaut that we now know and love. And yeah, I think it was certainly out of all the films so far, this was certainly the most Oscar worthy, I think, in terms of it ticks a lot of the boxes of what you would think of now as an Oscar film. And yeah, I think it was the perfect one for them to really sort of properly push for a big campaign.
So, moving on from prestige, Oscars, great plaudits, we move into Mojave. So, written and directed by the Oscar-winning screenwriter of The Departed, William Monahan, it sees Hollywood director Tom, who's dissatisfied with his life and wants to just get away from it all, so he drives into the Mojave Desert. So the getaway doesn't turn out the way he expects, and Drifter, played by Oscar Isaacs, returning to A24 once again, stumbles into the camp, and the encounter ends with both men seemingly wanting to kill each other. What the director is unaware of is that the Drifter, who didn't know who he was during the encounter, ends up finding out who he is and about his life, which makes him an easy target once the director returns to Los Angeles. So, the Drifter seemingly wants to torture the director with threats of harm against the director's friends, associates and loved ones, including his current girlfriend. But regardless of the threats, if they're real or not, or are they just going to be psychological torture? And their game of cat and mouse takes a further twist when an innocent third party is accidentally killed, and each man wants to frame the other for his death. So, brother, what did you make of Mojave, and when was the first time you ever watched it?
The first time I ever watched Mojave was 2 days ago. just ahead of this podcast. It's one which to be honest, I'd never heard of until it was on the list, and it's one which I'm actually, having watched it now, not surprised that I maybe hadn't heard of it before seeing it on the list, because it wasn't the best film that I've ever seen. It actually might end up being sort of near the bottom of films that I've seen on the A24 project. I had high hopes, based on the synopsis. I thought, wow, this is going to be good. Oscar Isaac, he is. I think I did some research, and I think, like you say, this is his third A24 film. He did Ex Machina, A Most Violent Year, and this, and I think he is joint top. I think he's the most featured actor so far, and also I think he's joint actually with the other star of the previous film, Brie Larson, who has done 3 films as well: Room, Spectacular Now, and the upcoming Free Fire, which we'll talk about in a future episode. So I think someone else listening can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they are the 2 actors who have appeared the most across the A24 back catalogue. So we'll see. But Oscar Isaac is an actor who I really like. I think he was fantastic in Inside Llewyn Davis. That was one of the first things I sort of seen him in. Great in Ex Machina, Force Awakens. But for me, this was the worst performance I've seen him give. I think this was. I'm not sure what exactly he was going for, but the sort of growling Hulk Hogan-esque brother that he kept, every second line was like, brother this, brother that, and oh brother, where art thou? Because it was not for me, I don't think. Garrett Hedlund, for me, he's just one of these actors who sort of appears in things, but I have no real connection with, and always seems kind of vacant and bland. I think, I don't know how you felt about it, but yeah, just the combination of these two just didn't grip me at all, unfortunately.
Yeah, I kind of liked sort of Garrett in sort of On the Road, and I thought he was excellent in that. And I thought, man, this guy's he's gonna go somewhere, but it's never sort of kind of worked for him. I mean, this week was my first time ever watching it as well. It was on Amazon Prime, and I remembered sort of, I think it was last year or something, when I was sort of thinking about this as a podcast idea, and I sort of looked through the list of films, which ones I'd seen, which I hadn't, and then I noticed Mojave, and I clicked on that and noticed, oh, Oscar Isaac's in it, Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg is in this. Okay, pretty good cast. I'm kind of on board for this. And then I remember being in Poundland a few months ago, and I noticed it there, sort of in their Blu-ray for a pound section. I was like, yeah, I could maybe pick that up. Like, it'll be, I'll eventually watch it for this podcast. I might as well pick it up. But I never bothered in the end, and I probably just bought like 60 sort of headbands or something for a pound instead. And I kind of watched it last week, and I was like, right, here we go. Sounds interesting. And it was absolutely painful to watch. Like, I don't know what movie Oscar Isaac thinks he's in. I don't know what movie Mark Wahlberg thinks he's in. Like, every one of the cast seems to be doing the performance that belongs in another movie that, Oscar Isaac, as you say, is just sort of like, hello, brother, 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 brother. Like, if you had a drinking game where you had to take a shot every time you said brother, you would be like dead. Mark Wahlberg, I don't know what he's doing in this. He's sort of this random role as a sort of producer that is shagging around, taking coke, sort of walking around like he's got big dick energy style performance. I don't know what these people think they're doing. Like, William Monahan really did an amazing job with the Departed script, but the man clearly can't direct actors because everyone has just run amok or has badly directed in this movie. I don't know what the hell was going on.
I thought Mark Wahlberg thought he was maybe in the Entourage movie, because he sort of seems to be playing sort of part of like himself when Mark Wahlberg appears as himself in the Entourage movie, but then also combined with Jeremy Piven's character in Entourage. He just seemed to be on, also maybe a bit of Scarface or something in there, sort of wandering around his big palatial mansion in a dressing gown or something. So yeah, it was like when he turned up, I was like, oh, Mark Wahlberg. But this is how much people care about this movie, and the fact that Mark Wahlberg on the DVD, on the back of the DVD cover, it's misspelled. It actually says Whalberg. So they've misspelled Wahlberg on the back of the DVD cover. No one noticed, apart from me for some reason. So yeah, no, but I mean, Oscar Isaac's, I don't know what he's going for. I mean, it's almost, the film kind of reminded me of like The Hitcher, where it's, there's there's just this random encounter with this person, and they manage to basically piss him off, and he basically decides, for some reason or another, that he's basically going to hunt them down and torture them and kill them. It's like you don't really know why. I mean, it's like there's this sort of subplot sort of thing where Oscar Isaac's character is apparently killing a lot of people in the Mojave Desert. You know, he's got this gun, it's got like 7 notches on it and stuff like that. But apparently, you know, he's got a cabin, he's got an old trailer in the thing, but for some reason the police can't seem to find this place in the Mojave Desert and find the killer. So yeah, it's just a very odd one. And you know, this sort of going around quoting Moby Dick and Shakespeare like it's, you know, meant to be, you know, full of gravitas and deep and meaningful. But yeah, no, it's just, yeah, it didn't, none of this really worked for me at all, I don't think.
Like, are you a fan of The Departed?
I'm a big fan of The Departed. I mean, I loved Infernal Affairs. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. That's the original sort of Chinese version of the film. And, you know, The Departed for a remake is absolutely wonderful. You know, is it the one that Martin Scorsese should have won Best Director and Best Picture for? Probably not. But as a piece of entertainment, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think the acting across in that film is sensational. Jack Nicholson's brilliant. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio's brilliant. Matt Damon is great. You know, Mark Wahlberg was a huge surprise in that. You know, he was probably the best, one of the best things in it, which is not something I would have thought going into The Departed. But Mark Wahlberg actually showed, you know, he actually could handle that dialogue and whatever. But yeah, there's a difference between writing the dialogue and directing the dialogue. So clearly you need someone like Scorsese to get the best out of a script like this. But I was having a thought, actually, after sort of sitting and thinking about the film. I was starting to wonder, and I don't know if this is true or if you thought this as well. Is there a chance that this was meant to be like Oscar Isaac was actually in Garrett Hedlund's head? Like a Fight Club kind of thing, where it's like this inner part of his brain is basically trying to tell him to do all these things, and he's wrestling with himself about trying to be a good person or a bad person and stuff like this. I don't know. I was starting to think, you know, there's 2 scenes where you kind of see Oscar Isaac interact with other people, but maybe it's all from the perspective of someone else. I don't know. I was starting to think this can't be just the film, you know, because, you know, when it gets to the end, it's like, you know, it can't just be that. Maybe, you know, because there's a typewriter in the thing is in the trailer at the end. Maybe Garrett Hedlund's character, who's a movie producer, goes out there and writes films in there to get away from it all. And then I think it was like the bit where he has a gun and he puts it into the bottom of a TV, and it's like, how would Oscar Isaac's character know that unless he is that person? And that's where it started to get me thinking we had a Fight Club situation on it. But even if that was the case and it was meant to be like that, it's clearly not executed well enough to be that noticeable either. I don't know. Did you get any of that? Or
Yeah, I think you've certainly got a point there. It's certainly making me reconsider the movie. Would it make me bump it up even a half star? No, but is there something there? Yeah, potentially. You know, it's weird when you go into sort of William Monahan's sort of Wikipedia page that talks about his sort of writing career, then producing and directing, and then sort of you get to his sort of post-Departed period, and like in his Wikipedia, this film is not mentioned at all.
Really?
Like,
wow.
You'll get it in the credits, but look, I'll talk about like Monahan's directorial debut was London Boulevard, released in 2010. Full stop, that's the end. Nothing ever happened, nothing to see here unless you go shopping in Poundland for the film. So yeah, it's sort of reduced to the credits bit, but isn't good enough to get sort of a mention. You know, you think of some of the cast that are involved in this, it's really kind of weird.
Wow, yeah, London Boulevard is one which I've not seen either and had heard mixed things about. But yeah, maybe I'll just give that one a miss now, given that it's from the director of this one. Because did he direct the? He didn't direct the Gambler, was it? No, that was just a screenplay. Because he did that with Mark Wahlberg, which is why I thought that he must have clearly done something that Mark Wahlberg liked, because able to get him in for quite a small role, essentially, but allowed him to sort of overact and stuff like that. But yeah, it seemed weird him popping up in the middle of his film, and yet again, you know, Walton Goggins appearing very briefly and not making the best use of Walton Goggins either. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's in him again as like sort of a bit of an early role kind of for him, sort of his popularity stakes. So it's like, it is such an interesting cast that has been assembled, but it's just totally wasted here. And Oscar Isaac, one of the hottest actors in the world right now, and I think people kind of forget he has starred in some poor movies, but like this is sort of following on from, he's been in Ex Machina. He has been in A Most Violent Year, two of the best A24 movies, and now he's been in one of the ones that is kind of at the bottom. I think the only saving grace is Oscar Isaac is so funny and bad in this movie that he makes it somewhat watchable.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it is one of those performances which is so off the wall, and that you're just drawn to it, to wonder. You're watching it going, what exactly is he going to do next with it? Because he's making some, so he's swinging for the fences, choices, and it certainly doesn't hit it out of the park. But you've got to commend him for, he does go all in on the sort of weirdness of this character, and yeah, it won't go down in the pantheon of great Oscar Isaac performances, but it'll probably certainly be the strangest that I'll see for a long time. And yeah, and Garrett Hedlund, like you say, he's done some films and it's just never really taken off for him. Tron Legacy, he was in that. He was actually in Inside Llewyn Davis as well. Mudbound, actually, he was actually all right in Mudbound. I think I watched that last year. But apparently, Oscar Isaac and Garrett Hedlund are reteaming for Triple Frontier, which is available on Netflix. Will you be catching that one, or are you going to give it a miss given your Mojave experience?
I mean, there certainly might be an opportunity to watch it.
And it'll be on my list of Netflix things, but there will always be, I think, other things which sort of get slightly higher up, and I'll find more worthy. Also, because Triple Frontier is not directed by a woman, so therefore, I'm needing to bump up my 52 films by women quota over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, it'll be way down the list, I think. So
yeah, I will definitely catch it at some point. Has it not been out for like a few weeks already as well? So
I think so. Yeah, so it came out, I think, mid-March or something like that. So
yeah, I will get round to it eventually. I'll probably want to maybe watch on a train or something like that. But brother, do you have any kind of final thoughts on Mojave?
Mojave is a film which, Garrett Hedlund's character goes out, gets kind of lost in the desert, and kind of wish that this one had got lost in the desert and not made it back to civilization, because it's going to be near the bottom of the pile for me. I think there's some interesting choices, to be fair, that are made in this film, but I think it's just, if it had a more capable director, I think it would have. There was potential here, but it's just a bit of a mess overall.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. It wasn't the best way to start 2016, but next week we've got kind of two movies coming up. We've got The Witch and Remember. So Dallas, have you seen either of these movies?
I have not seen Remember, but I have seen The Witch, which was one of my favourite horror films of that year, and a truly fantastic breakout performance by Anya Taylor-Joy. So very excited to be able to talk about that one and revisit that one in the world of Black Phillip.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're going to be trading in Brothers for Goats next week, so be sure to tune in 2 weeks' time when we'll discuss The Witch and Remember with a special guest. So thank you very much to everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to joining you next week for more A24 films. Bye.